Oxford first Legends of Leadership event. Truly delighted to lead this partnership as Oxfow's first ever Leader in Practice. Now, the Oxford Foundry was set up in 2017 with support from the incredible Reid Hoffman, co-founder of social media platform LinkedIn. But more importantly for all of us here today, he is also the founding donor and senior advisor at the Oxford Foundry. Now, the Foundry's purpose is to build a new generation of ventures and leaders through entrepreneurship. Now, leadership has several intersections, and today I'm delighted to discuss the synergies between sports leadership and entrepreneurship with a true role model for what entrepreneurship epitomizes. A big welcome and thank you for joining us today, Reid. I really appreciate your time.
It's an honor and a pleasure.
I'm looking forward to the next hour. I can assure you, I've got my pen and paper because it's not every day you get to sit down and talk to Reid. Brilliant for the next hour. So now Reid has had a phenomenal career facing all the trials and tribulations of an entrepreneur, yet still holds this essence of humanity and leadership that many would desire. Now, we're also joined by guests tuning in from over 70 different countries across the world. A big thank you to all of you as well for joining us live here for this conversation. Now, for me, one of the important things for me in leadership is knowing who you are and where you came from. So I'd like to start this conversation with a traditional Māori greeting we'd like to do in our native New Zealand language, te reo Māori. I tupua hui Southbridge, I te tā o te awa rākaia, e te taha o te roto te waihora, e noho ana hau I tamaki, ko dankata hau. E aku nui, e aku rahi, e hui mai nei I tēnei rā. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Now, I don't expect many of you to understand what I said, but what I was basically doing was a pepeha, which explains a little bit about who I am and where I grew up, which I grew up in a small little country town called Southbridge. I also did a mihi, which was me welcoming you all here today and thanking you for joining us. Now, you can relax, Reid, because I'm not going to ask you to give us a pepeha or mihi in our native language. But I would love
by the way, I feel very honored. That's the first time I've heard Maori, and hearing it from you is an honor.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Now, I would love to start with you telling us a little bit about your upbringing. You know, where did you grow up? What did you want to be? And who were the leaders you were inspired by and why?
So I grew up principally in the San Francisco Bay Area, Berkeley, California. I was born at the Stanford Hospital when my father was a law student at Stanford. So in many ways, a lot of my kind of values and systems are very Californian, which I didn't really realize was Californian until I started going to other places, and then you begin to see the differences. I'd say a lot of my childhood was shaped. There's kind of a funny way of looking at kind of how I grew up to be. It was basically reading lots of science fiction, playing Dungeons and Dragons, and playing board games. And if you kind of put those three things together, a lot of the rest of my trajectory makes sense. Because like when you think about kind of heroes or inspiration, it was both a combination of kind of, I think, some of the kind of amazing heroes whose leadership and vision was kind of still echoing around the culture as I was growing up. Martin Luther King, John Lennon, other folks who had a deep spiritual bent about who we aspired to be, who we would want to become, and how we can reach within us to find that essence of who we aspire to be, and then try to do that. And then, of course, also science fiction. Reading anything from Ender's Game and Dune, to a wide, Robert Heinlein, Isaac Asimov, all these folks thinking about like the scale of humanity, namely, kind of what journey not only are we on as individuals, but what journey are we on as a species? What journey are we on as a set of societies and cultures? And thinking in that large scope, combined with Dungeons and Dragons, board games, all the rest, was kind of what gave me the shape. Now, I didn't really have a specific, like, I want to be an X, like, I want to be, a president, or I want to be an entrepreneur, or I want to be an academic. What I did want to do is understand more about who we were and who we are and who we could become, both as individuals and as a society. I later kind of realized that was in part how you would think about as kind of public intellectuals who kind of comment in media, in essays and television, so forth, about who we are and who we should be. But then I also realized that could be done in a number of different ways. And that was kind of the early part of that journey, was thinking in these very broad scopes from reading these books and listening to these amazing leaders.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like, everyone has a very different journey. Like, I knew from I was 5 years old exactly what I wanted to be. I still remember the Rugby World Cup in 1987, the inaugural Rugby World Cup, and the All Blacks were dominating that tournament. And there was a couple of key players. John Kerwin was one of them, David Kirk, and all I wanted to be, the dream of mine, was to be like them. So all of a sudden, I had people that I inspired to be like, and it really drove me. But I never really thought of it as a leadership role. Like, I was more of a follower. I just kind of went about my day, but I just wanted to be an All Black. So I had this desire, and it wasn't until I was in the All Black environment that I was surrounded by such incredible people, amazing leaders. So I just wanted to absorb it all, and I would often follow them around. I probably annoyed the hell out of them because I was listening to every single word, following them around. But then there came a stage where it was my turn to lead. And as a young kid, I never thought that I'd be in a situation where I'm leading a team. So I would love to know how you've talked a little bit about your childhood influence, the person you are today. But how did that childhood shape your leadership and entrepreneurship in any way?
Well, I think I had to learn the importance of leadership. I mean, a little bit similar to your own journey. When I was reading these books, I mean, I guess, I had a funny form of leadership as very early childhood, being the game master for, like, I wasn't one of the players. I was the game master in the Dungeons and Dragons thing. So I would set the scenario and the characters and the puzzles and the role modeling, the kind of the interactive scenarios and so forth. But I didn't really think about kind of that as leadership. And I didn't really think about, kind of the importance of how we can make these big changes is through leadership. And it doesn't just have to be, I mean, everyone, tends to think leadership is, the president of the United States or something else. And actually, in fact, everyone can be, in some sense, should be a leader in, a practice, a leader in a local community, a leader in, kind of getting some interesting project done. So I think leadership is all around us, and to some degree is calling for everyone. But then what I started realizing as I started thinking about, like, well, if you're going to accomplish these very large tasks, how is it that you're going to do that? Well, you actually, in fact, have to kind of assemble people who share your vision, who are motivated by the same passion for the future possibility. And so I guess probably it started in college for me, because I would do things like I kind of majored in this major called symbolic systems, which kind of artificial intelligence and cognitive science. And as I started majoring in, part of the reason I created the major was to try to discover this new arena of thinking about systematically about how we think, how we speak, what kinds of creatures think in symbols, speak in symbols, understand them, do logic. And then, so I created a symbolic system forum, and I created some internship programs, and I created an annual speaker series and everything else, because I was grappling with the problem. And then I started realizing that in order to do that, you had to assemble groups of people in order to do that. And that, of course, leads to both the poetry and the plumbing of leadership, because on the poetry side, it's here's this amazing thing we're doing. this is going to be epic, heroic, something really important. On the plumbing is, and here's how we're actually going to get it done, right? Here's who sets up the tables, here's who sets up the desks, et cetera, et cetera. It's the whole thing.
Oh, brilliant. You talk a little bit, obviously about those college years, and I'm not sure if many people know you studied at Stanford University, but I would love to know the story of how you came to study a master's in philosophy from Oxford University. Like, what were the drivers of your decision, and how did that help shape your philosophical worldview?
So I did some org systems, and one of the things I concluded is we didn't really know. It's funny because here we are thinking and speaking, and we don't really know how thinking and speaking work, right? We do it, but we have no real sense of how it happens. And so I was like, well, if we're going to understand this, if we're going to understand how we can reason our way to better understanding, to more wisdom, to more knowledge, if we're going to create new kinds of tools to help us, if we're going to create possibly artificial intelligence tools, we need to understand thought and language. And so I was like, okay, well, who would have the best shot at knowing this? Probably philosophy. I've done a little bit of it at Stanford. And then where's the best place in the world to do philosophy? Well, Oxford. All right, well, I'll get a Marshall Scholarship. I'll go to Oxford and I'll study philosophy. And that was the kind of the impetus of it, as a way of kind of trying to learn the thing that, or study the thing that no one has a clear grasp on. And philosophy is an excellent way to do that.
And can you tell us about your personal leadership philosophy? What are the philosophical techniques that you use, or thought leaders, that have greatly impacted your approach to leadership in the business world?
So there was some kind of leadership projects that I did at Stanford and Oxford. And then, as I got into the business world, I started realizing that this was a performance sport, right? That what you had to do is you had to organize these teams, which, by the way, are fluid, of people coming in and out, because sometimes people quit, go take another job, we hire new people, you're growing, you're hiring a bunch of new people. And how do you have that all drive the right way? And so obviously still with that kind of grand vision, which you, I think, always have to have, because it's like, well, why am I going to put in my all to this? Why is this a intense journey that's worth taking? Then you have to have kind of questions around, like, well, the culture of your organization. It's good, as we kind of talk about a lot on Masters of Scale, the podcast, it's very good to define that explicitly. Then you also want to have, what are the ways that people's senses of identity and the work they're doing come together? And so how do you enable each person to be kind of the hero of the project they're working on and the thing they're doing, and that we are heroes together? That's because I'm a hero doesn't mean you're also not a hero. It's we are doing this heroically together. And there's both, as I mentioned earlier, poetry and plumbing. Part of the plumbing of it is to be able to cohere and make quick decisions, to decide this is what we're going to, how the decision is going to be made. Frequently it's by the leader in charge, whoever she or he might be. But sometimes it's kind of an organizational process group, kind of how you do that decisioning and you commit. There's a whole bunch of things that I started learning very early in that, about also, how do you recover from failure? Because if you're playing hard enough, you will not succeed all the time. If you succeed all the time, it's because you're not really pushing yourself to be as aspirational as you could be. And those were all kind of some of the very early things at Apple, and then Fujitsu, which were my kind of corporate experience before I founded my first company.
Incredible. For those of you that have joined late, Reid and I are about to talk about the synergies between sports leadership and entrepreneurship. And just a reminder, you'll see you can ask questions. So the last 15 minutes of our conversation, I'll be going to those questions where you can ask whatever you want for Reid and I, which we'll be doing at the end of the conversation. Now, something I've really learned and is hugely important in sport is, especially around the leadership, is setting and seeing a vision and working out the strategy. What is the purpose? You've already talked a little bit through your philosophies of, the why, the ways to enable people to be the hero, but making sure that you're all walking together. And you've talked, I've read about this thing called the drumbeat, which I was fascinated by. But there's not so obvious role to leaders play, and therefore once things are set up, you've got your vision. People don't just follow blindly, and you've talked about the need for a pulse in the business, or an ethos set by a leader that just basically keeps things moving towards that vision. You've said that every leader has to create a drumbeat for the company. I would love to know what characterized the drumbeat at LinkedIn, and what impact did that have on your employees and company's performance?
So one of the things that's really key, in addition to direction and so forth, is what is the speed of movement and the speed of kind of the needs of the organization to move and to adjust and learn. And one of the things that's frequently very important in startups is because, as perhaps some of the people here know, the way I describe startups is you jump off a cliff and you assemble an airplane on the way down. The need for fast decisioning, fast action is very important, because you're essentially in this kind of quasi-mortal state until you've got your plane assembled. And you're like, oh, shoot, that's not working, and I need to change, do something else. And so part of the drumbeat is a combination of a few things. One is kind of a metronome. What's the speed you're operating on? What's the like, is it daily? Is it weekly? Like, and obviously you're doing work every day, but it's kind of like, where are we setting the objectives out in order to what we do? But then there's also, somewhat like, since I went to Oxford, I also spent the first term rowing. One of the things, you're going to go to Oxford, learn how to row. And so not to say I was very good, but it was still good. It was a great experience. And similar, that kind of drumbeat is how we all go together, right? Like, what's the way that we're synchronized? It's not just on the speed of action and time, but in the set of actions we're taking, the set of steps we're taking, so it's coordinated to be efficient and effective, and to adjust and learn as you need to. And so, some of that is, kind of, well, when you're a leader of larger and larger organizations, how do you communicate? How do you coordinate with all the leaders? How do you adjust to changes in the market, changes in competition? And part of that is, one of the really central things is to communicate a lot. And I think one of the lessons within this kind of drumbeat of communications is, you only begin to know you're communicating enough once you get to a large organization, once you're really, really tired of saying it. And at that point, maybe it has just begun to sink into the organization, because the organization is not sitting there and every time you say a sentence, that becomes their new commandment that's on the wall. It's like they're kind of working through problems, they're doing stuff, and they're coordinating with people. And so in order to really do it, you have to be establishing that drumbeat about what it is you're doing and where you're going. And so, for example, in the very early days of LinkedIn, people got social networking quickly. They got Friendster, they got MySpace, they got Facebook. They said, okay, I get it. It's kind of where I share pictures and where I talk with people. And most people are like, I don't get this LinkedIn thing. I mean, like, for example, when we launched, we were described as Friendster, but for business, which is kind of like, well, a dating site, but for business. And you're like, well, but that's not actually in fact how it works, because the notion is collaboration and obviously job seeking and recruiting, but also like, how do you find expertise? How do you and your colleagues and friends help each other? How do you help each other find the right people in order to assemble the right present team or virtual team in order to solve certain kinds of problems? And it took us, years. We're still on that journey to try to get people to understand it. And so you had to set up a tempo of, look, we get that we're going to be misunderstood, but we're working towards being understood the right way. And it will be a slow conversion of people going, now I get how this fits into my life.
Oh, brilliant. You talked a lot there about the speed of movement, in particular with startups and your experiences at LinkedIn there. Now, I'd love to know during the early blitzscaling years, and blitzscaling, it's new terminology for me as an athlete, because we spend so much time, probably too much time, on making sure we're just so efficient. We're not wanting to be making any mistakes. We're often having meetings for the sake of having meetings, because when looking back now, it was almost easier to just commit to something, make a mistake if that was the wrong decision, and learn from it, because you learn so much more than sitting back, walking on thin ice, not wanting to make a mistake. So during the early years, the early blitzscaling years of building LinkedIn, which was circa 2002, 2004, how did you prioritize the prioritization of speed? I love this, the prioritization of speed over efficiency in an environment of uncertainty influence your approach to leadership?
So first, part of the reason why we chose the term blitzscaling as a term, blitz was actually more from sports, the blitz, than it was necessarily a military metaphor. Although obviously they share that German word of lightning for speed in a very kind of key way. And so and one of the challenges at LinkedIn early is we actually didn't start blitzscaling until later, because we didn't have the conditions. You, generally speaking, want to have a lot of market demand, a lot of market pull. What I was describing earlier is LinkedIn is like, well, what is this thing? Could be interesting, could be useful, seems important, not sure what it is. As a mass response, that's not where you actually start blitzscaling. Matter of fact, we didn't really even have a value proposition until we had 1 million members in, because if you're a network property and there's other people that you need to find, we had to grow to 1 million people before the value proposition really kicked in. And the particular challenge of it is we were getting the experience of having to chart our course against comparison companies that were blitzscaling. Friendster was blitzscaling, MySpace was blitzscaling, Facebook was blitzscaling, because they had enough raw demand where people, like Friendster started, the internet was boring. Like, oh, look, I can discover other people. I can share interesting pictures. I can see some interesting events that are going on. I can communicate some. And, then it kind of goes to MySpace. I can decorate my profile in interesting ways, express my identity. And then Facebook is a really, really easy way of sharing a set of pictures and links and other kinds of things as a way of happening. And all of those were happening while we were still trying to say, and here is how you can use us to really amplify and take control of your business career. So our lessons, interestingly, we got to where we were also blitzscaling, but our early lessons were how, when someone else is going by on the huge powerboat, how to keep your boat going and not get tipped over, by what's happening in blitzscaling. Because generally speaking, if you have a narrow competitor who's blitzscaling and you're not, generally speaking, you're going to lose. Your competitor may also lose, but if they've got the kind of blitz capital and they're moving and they're being able to invest massively in the market, they're going to suck up a lot of the oxygen of financing and customers and employees and press attention and all the rest. And so, you're going to sit there and, well, I'm working my way towards profitability. I have my CAC over my long-term value. I have my operating margins. And you're like, yeah, in this hyper-connected world, it's a Glengarry, Glen Ross market where the first prize is Cadillac, second prize is steak knives, and third prize is you're fired. So what we did in the early days of LinkedIn was we were essentially going, okay, we're not in a place where we can blitzscale until later, where we said, okay, now we have that demand, we can grow the recruiting business, we can grow the sales business, we have enough value proposition, we can begin to multi-thread into, like what's the news and information you need for yourself as a professional today, what's going on with your contacts, and all of that is when we kind of really got to the blitzscaling side of it. Now, the very last piece, which I know is important, especially in the parallel with sports, is that very little of this happens in environments of certainty. You're creating something new. You don't know what the competitors are doing. You don't necessarily know how the market's responding. You may not know what your business model should be. You may have an idea what your go-to-market is, but you may be refining it a whole lot. And the short answer for the modern tech universe and most other entrepreneurs is just go and learn and correct. And you have to, you just have to, obviously you have to anticipate that you're going to have some faults, and then you're going to correct, and you have to try to not make the critical ones, only make ones that are easy to fix from. But that uncertainty is actually, in fact, part of what makes it so hard to kind of blitz forward, because you're like, wow, I can screw this up so many ways. You're like, yep, go.
I can only imagine through those Blitzscaling years, the amount of uncertainty that comes. And I look at my experiences when I'm thinking about uncertainty, and there's just so much uncertainty into the world of professional sport. Now, we're often judged every 4 years on a rugby World Cup, and my first 2 World Cups, 2003 and 2007, we went into the tournament potential favourites. We're playing good rugby, but we hadn't planned or even prepared for these uncertainties that could happen, and it's really hard to plan for. But we took some huge learnings from those World Cups, and we soon understood that a Rugby World Cup tournament is different to any other rugby tournament that we play. The fact that you're playing 7 weeks straight, if you're to go all the way, all the teams there have been preparing 4 years for that moment. So they're playing at the peak of their powers, and strange things happen in Rugby World Cups. You have poor refereeing decisions that can often change a game. You can have serious injuries to some key players through that time. You come up against opposition that do things that you haven't planned for. So a real learning that we went through when dealing with these times of uncertainty would often break into little mini teams, position-specific groups, and would also do it as a team. And we would have these sessions called what if sessions, where we'd probe questions. What if our captain gets a red card, God forbid it, 15 minutes into the game, we have to play the rest of the game with 14 men. What if we're down by 3 points with 2 minutes to play? Do you take the shot, or do you try and score the 5 points? And you start having these conversations about what if these moments, and all of a sudden you come up with plans as a team for these moments, and you hope that these moments don't happen. But something that we learned is they do. Okay, there's no way you're going to go through a game where unexpected things happen. So we all learned that there's probably in a test match, you're going to come up with 3 extreme uncertainties. So when it does happen in a game, you look at your teammate in the eye and you go, okay, there's one, there's probably going to be a couple more after this. You deal with it and you move on quickly. Whereas often, especially those first couple of World Cups, something would happen and we'd be shocked and we wouldn't have the answer. And, it would affect our performance. But when we started this process of just talking about potential uncertainties that could happen, it helped us deal with them so much faster. And even if an event did happen that we hadn't talked about, we kind of expected something like that to happen anyway. So whether we had the exact answer or not, it didn't shock us as much. So dealing with that uncertainty was, it was something that we had to do every test match, that we played. I'd love to talk about culture. It's so huge, and leadership and a sports team and business needs to really codify its culture and make it clearly known internally. And one of the strengths of the All Blacks culture, there was this certain mystique to the All Black culture, where a number of people would often travel to New Zealand to try and figure out the secret to the All Blacks. Why are they one of the most successful sporting teams in the last 100 years? A small little country of 5 million people being so dominant, against the rest of the world. Now, I don't have the answer, and to be honest, I don't think there is any secret ingredient, but I put it down to to the incredible culture that has been built over decades. It's a really all-inclusive culture. So we embrace different ethnicities. We have the Pacific Island brothers, Fijians, Samoans, Tongans, Cook Islands. We have South Africans that play for us. We have Australians that play for us. We have Māoris, European Pakeha, and we all come together and build this culture. We actually embrace the different cultures. And I still remember a process we went through is where everyone that was from a different background and culture, they had a piece of string. It was a different color. And we brought all the different pieces of string representing their different cultures, and we intertwined it into a really strong piece of rope. And that rope traveled around with us everywhere. And basically it showed that we're stronger together when you embrace. And we'd often have traditional drink called kava, Fijian traditional drink called kava. We'd have kava sessions. We would be singing songs in different languages, just really embracing that. So it was a real strength of the All Black culture. Another one was a real culture of excellence. And that started as soon as you walked into the environment. You knew that you were at another level. The first thing you'd do is you'd look back on the All Blacks that had gone before you, and basically you understood from that day that you're just a custodian of the jersey. That jersey, the All Black jersey, is not yours. You're just a custodian of that jersey, and your sole purpose while you're in that environment is to add to the legacy. Whether you're a player, coach, part of the medical team, support staff, you're striving to do your job better than the people that have done it before. So you're wanting to add to the legacy and leave the environment in a better place than it was before you arrived. And that's something that's been going for decades. Another important thing, and whether it's just the New Zealand culture or not, but we have a huge emphasis on humility and gratitude. Always, making sure that our feet are firmly on the ground, because sport has a funny way of humbling you. As soon as you start getting ahead of yourself and thinking that you're better than you are. So we spend a lot of time of making sure that the changing room is just as clean after a game as it was when we first walked in. Our team room is spotless. Just the little things that really build discipline. Now that are some examples of I think why the All Blacks have built such a strong culture for so long. I'd love to know, how did you create an intentional culture at PayPal and LinkedIn that help you drive performance, energize employees, and create that winning mentality?
Well, not a surprise. There are very common elements to what you just described in All Blacks and what healthy high performance cultures within business, LinkedIn, PayPal, others look like. And I think there's a bunch that's interesting to really learn from each other. I do think that one of the things that that's kind of interesting about startups versus kind of existing is you're building an institution trying to get to that same place of what you described as custodian, and is frequently we describe as stewardship, or one of the ways that, for example, when Jeff Weiner and I were recruiting to LinkedIn, it was not come work for us, it was come work for the mission. And part of the thing you want to do on culture is it isn't that and I'll use this term because I'm a little wary of the kind of A player language, the aphorisms within the business world, but it's because we have sports parallel, I'll use it here, which is not every A player should work for your company, right? You only really define your culture well when an A player who, would fit with you, but not with someone else, or would fit with someone else and not with you. Because it isn't like, well, we're about excellence. No. What form of excellence? What kind of way? So for example, we move really, really fast and we correct from errors, or we're really thoughtful and we plan really well and we've got all the contingencies the right way. We discover truth by arguing ferociously, right? So, or we discover truth by research and by you're just putting out the facts. We focus on revenue this year. We think revenue comes once you're in a strategic position. All of these things are kind of different ways you could possibly play the game that have some polarity to them. And, those are among the things that you're going, these are the ones about how we play the game. And obviously the ones that the way we play the game is, well, which game are you playing and what does winning look like? And what is the mission that you're trying to do and change in the world? And so, for example, like a very specific one at LinkedIn. So typically businesses very easily rotate around who pays the money, right? Because the general mantra that everyone learns about business is, it's all about the customers, make sure you're paying attention to them. Some people kind of say, well, you have to be with the employees first because that's how you deliver well to the customers. I think that's very true in some businesses. Like, I think it's a good truth. I don't think it's the only truth. Again, how do you play the game? But you go, okay, well, it's about customers, so it's about who pays us money. So businesses very naturally rotate to who we serve is who pays us money. Now, one of the things we knew from very early day in LinkedIn, which, we now have over 740 million people worldwide signed up for it, is that the vast majority of people on LinkedIn don't pay us. And yet the entire value of the network is all the people who are there and are reachable and could possibly be, kind of pitched to help your project. Doesn't just mean like recruiting and everything else, but like anything, advice, all the rest. And so when we were defining our culture, we put our members first. And very specifically, it's members, not customers per se, because it'd be very easy for the business to rotate around. Well, corporations pay us the vast majority of our money. And so we should do what they want us to do. So when they say we would like X, Y, and Z, we should just do that because we should be customer focused. It's like, no, we should be member focused. And our members are always, by far and away, the bulk of them are the people who don't pay us money, but that's okay. That's our focus. And you have to enshrine that so that people are understanding how to make decisions, trade-offs, when they challenge something, when they think this is the right thing, when they propose a strategic initiative, when they respond to a crisis in a particular way. You need to have those kinds of values and kind of the culture of what you're doing, kind of explicitly defined. Anyway, so those are some examples of parallels.
Yeah, with a startup, is that the co-founders that are trying to bring that, or that stewardship, or try and set up this culture, or do you almost need to employ someone to go, right, this is your sole mission to build this?
Well,
like, we're very fortunate with the All Blacks. We've got such a history to go off, and I know that's what you're trying to build, and I'm just trying to get my head around a startup. It is very different because that's your aspiration, that's where you want to get to, but who are the people that are driving that?
Well, fundamentally it starts with the founders, right? Because the founders, and part of the reason why on Masters of Scale, another place we gotta go define your culture, is because too often startup founders will go, hey, I've got an idea for product, I have an idea for service, nothing else matters because you have to be really focused, I'm just gonna go build it. You hire people. And the reason why, unlike many things in blitzscaling, you can defer what your business model is. You can even sometimes defer knowing what your go-to-market is. There's all the uncertainty. You don't want to defer starting to define your culture. And the reason is, and defining it explicitly. And the reason is because while you may do what like a Neil Busry did at Workday, which is, he and David Duffield interviewed all first 500 employees as a culture check, that even though other people were interviewing for, kind of team play and skills and like being the right person for this team, they were making sure the culture would be there as well. Because what happens is, you've got one founder or two co-founders or three co-founders, then you hire another 10, another 20, then they're hiring people. That culture starts getting defined, just starts working its way out at that point. And so you want to, it doesn't mean it's rigid and locked, but you want to start it on the right direction, the right energy, the right path, the right core set of values to what you're doing. Because as you hire the 500 person, you want them further elaborating your culture. as a way of doing it. It's possible to refactor them, but it takes a huge amount of work, right? That's part of the Dara Khosrowshahi episode at Uber and others, that refactoring, Satya Nadella at Microsoft. These refounding moments can be very challenging. And so that's why you want to be very explicit. Now, part of what I find is interesting is it is good to have everyone thinking like a co-owner, a custodian, a steward. It's not just for us, it's for the next generation of employees, the next generation of customers, the next generation of shareholders, because you're trying to create these institutions that are, heroic in scale and live, possibly forever, certainly well beyond your own efforts to have a really positive influence in the world and to really like transform an industry. And so all of that is the reason why you end up with this very explicit culture building. Now, eventually you'll end up hiring people that help you with that. You can certainly get consultants, but at the very beginning, just like on any entrepreneurial thing, it's the founders and the founding team that's doing this among everything else they're doing.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Now, time is racing by. I need to talk to you about pressure, because in high performance, you need to be performing under pressure. And I'm also in professional sport, when you're taking a kick to win the game, when you're playing in front of 100,000 people, and you've got millions of people watching you, making sure you don't make a mistake. For me, I used to feel a real burden, a real weight on my shoulders when the pressure came on. And it wasn't until I spent some time in the All Black environment and we reshaped our mindset towards pressure. And there was two amazing people, Kerry Evans and Gilbert Anoka, that really, they were our head coaches that really just changed our mindset of actually, well, hold on, to have pressure in your life, it shouldn't be a burden. It should actually be a privilege, because it means you're on the verge of achieving something very unique and very special. And you should embrace it and walk towards pressure. So much so that I feel like I want and need pressure in my life every day to really drive me. So as soon as I changed my mindset to, okay, well, I want to be living in those moments of high pressure to really challenge myself. I'm sure that works through entrepreneurship as well, and business. The pressure that comes on you as a leader, as your team, is there any, can you tell us about how you deal with pressure in a way that enables you to be able to lead and perform, when the pressure's on?
Well, one reflective moment, which I think you already discussed, is to see the pressure not just as a negative, but as also an opportunity. So it's like it's to be thankful that you're in that you have a possibility of doing something that really matters. That pressure is also why there's a chance to do something that's hard to do. And so, like the way I frequently frame it is, these difficult tasks are precisely what gives us a chance to do something epic or something heroic. And so it's a offering, not just a challenge. And so now, that being said, it's important to keep balance and poise. It's important to be able to keep your cognitive decision making. So part of, like sometimes you have mindfulness, sometimes you have to kind of take a deep breath. Sometimes you have to kind of go, okay, let's reset on this. Let's put some emotion aside. Let's put ego aside. Let's just focus on this thing, because the reason why there's pressure there is because it's scary. The stakes matter. Failing is just painful and scary. And so you tend to be, okay, I really need to make this happen. I really need to succeed at this. And I think part of what you do is go, okay, you want to orient yourself to, I'm giving my best possible game. I'm learning from it. I can feel proud in giving my best possible game. And as long as I'm doing that and learning, I will win enough, right? And so that's what you need as a kind of a culture. That's what you need to kind of just define. And then you need to be doing the things that enable you doing your best possible game. So for example, for me, when I think about startups a lot, both as a founder and as an investor, it's like you're making decisions all the time. So make sure that you're in a good mental place for making super quick decisions in environments of uncertainty, in environments of chaos, in places where you could easily be wrong. You may need to track and do something differently. So that means sleep, that means balance of poise, that means not getting too emotionally wrapped around an axle and then making a bad decision because of that. Anyways, those sorts of things are part of the pressure answer.
Yeah. Now, there's a lot of the Oxford University students listening live here today. They are our future leaders. It's something I know you're passionate about. Also, myself now being able to share my knowledge to the future leaders of our world. So one last question before we go to the Q&As. The world of work it's rapidly changing. You know, things like burnout, anxiety, loneliness, depression are some symptoms of the daily suffering people face today with an increasingly, the increasing complexity and speed of change at work. Do you think that a shift towards human-centered leadership and greater compassion is required to build better companies?
Broadly, very much yes. I think that the question around, kind of like to some degree, your output is the quality, the talent, the organization, and their motivated and committedness to doing something. And so when you look at that and you say, well, what about kind of, human-centered leadership? So, well, how do you get that talent in? How do you deploy them and have them be motivated the right way? The answer is you need to be focusing on the people that are part of your team. And I think that one of the things that we do a lot of, kind of at Masters of Scaling, we also say that, like the Indra Nooyi episode, don't just think of when your team member is not the only member of the family who's invested in your business. So she went and wrote gratitude letters to her executive team's families for what they're doing, because they are also on this journey with you. And that's an example of kind of a human focus that causes people to go, great, this is the company, this is the mission that I resonate with, that I feel proud of, that I feel reinforced within my local community to do. And I think that's key.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, we've got plenty of questions coming through, so we might get straight into these. Okay, Reid, did you ever play rugby?
No.
Straight into the hard-hitting questions.
Yes.
How do you stay resilient? We've talked a lot about pressure, uncertainties. There'll be obvious setbacks. I know there's been a lot of setbacks throughout my career. So I'd love to know how you stay resilient through challenging times.
Look, it's not easy. It's always hard. Anyone who tells you that resilience is easy really hasn't encountered that much adversity yet. But it's also, of course, how you since we're all going to hit setbacks, how you recover, how you learn, how you fully commit to playing the game again, how you don't let that to screw you up is really fundamental to anything you're doing in life. And so the kind of mental orientations around resilience tend to be, okay, maybe I screwed up, maybe I chose the wrong game, but what did I learn? How can I play better? And how am I going to leverage that setback to accomplishing something more? And that's never waste a good crisis, always convert it into an opportunity. All of that kind of jujitsu thinking and the importance of driving forward is part of how you can help discover your own resilience and strengthen it, learn it. It's like a skill. It's like a capability, and it isn't something that you just need to say, I have it or I don't. You can become stronger at it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I feel like the person I am today is off the back of working through those disappointments, those setbacks, those injuries. And because when you have a clear focus and vision that you want to get to, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to have a lot of road bumps, a lot of things that don't go your way. So the sooner you understand that it's not going to be perfect, you're going to have setbacks. It's just a part of the life that we live in. And I had some pretty serious ones at certain stages of my career where I was really questioning whether I could achieve my goals or not. Ever since I played my very first test match for the All Blacks, my dream became a reality, but that wasn't enough for me. I wanted to be in not just another All Black that played 5 tests, 10 tests. I wanted to be an All Black great. Okay, so what does an All Black great look like? We actually have to be part of the environment for 10 years, to beat off all your competitors, people that are competing for your jersey, to outperform your competition. So it gave me real focus, which was just what I needed. But through my journey, I kept getting injured and having some serious setbacks, probably none more so than 2011. So it was my 3rd World Cup. I'd just been named to be captain for the All Blacks for the first time, a very proud moment. And then the day before the game, I was kicking a ball through the post, which I've done on probably a million times throughout my life, and I got injured. I fell to the ground. I ruptured my adductor muscle, and my World Cup was over. Now, that was a huge setback, and all of a sudden, because I'm a firm believer of things happen for a reason, but in that moment, it made no sense at all. Like, why me? Why such a serious injury? I felt sorry for myself. Now, a lot of people say, well, what you do is you just focus on just being positive. In a time like that, it's impossible to be positive. So something I've learned is it's actually okay to grieve. So whenever I have a setback, I use 24 hours to grieve. So I'm not a very nice person through that time. My poor wife takes the brunt of it. But it's me just getting my emotions out. But after that 24-hour period, I accept the setback, and then I refocus my goals. Okay, you're injured, you're out of the tournament, you can't change that. What was your goal? Oh, that's right, your first test match, you want to be an All Black great. Well, what does an All Black great do? He rehabs the best he can, a world-class level. He bounces back. He becomes a better player than he was beforehand. So all of a sudden, I had this new energy to drive me forward. And because I got through that and had a focus, 4 years later, I had another World Cup 2015 where it all went fantastically well, and all of a sudden, that gave me such confidence and strength that you can bounce back from these setbacks when at the time you think you can't. So dealing with resilience is challenging. Like you said, it's tough, but it's part of life. And if you can refocus and get back on track, it makes that success further down the line even more rewarding.
And I think what you were saying about owning the grief is really good too, because own the fact that it's painful, that it's not chosen, that it's not something you would necessarily an injury is not something you want. And, when it's on practice and all the rest, it's like, this feels like unnecessary, but to own it as a way of moving forward.
Yeah, I firmly believe that if you don't, it'll catch up on you at some stage. You can kid yourself and go, oh, no, everything's okay. I'm really positive. It's a little bit fake and, catch up on you. Now, I've talked a little bit about the importance of the All Black jersey, as a tremendous driver, for continued success for the All Blacks rugby team. What is the equivalent driver for success in business, in your opinion, Reid?
Well, I think there's a number, and depends. People, have multiple motivations, probably have multiple motivations in sports as well. For some, it's ones I most like working with. It's the mission. It's the how are we redefining the scope of the world in a way that's really good for all of us, both as individuals and a society. For some, it's money and economics. For some, it's the fame of it. And for some, it's all, it tends to be some combination like of all of the above. But I tend to think that the best part of it is when it's like when your company has a mission, what is the way that you are investing in trying to change the world, and why is that world a much better one than this one?
Yeah, brilliant. So we question from Ryan, I think, just thanking the both of us and Oxford University for this discussion. Can we expect to see you both anytime in the future hosting events in Oxford? Like, I would love to be there in person. Unfortunately, the borders are closed here in New Zealand. And Reid, I'm not sure if you have any trips to Oxford anytime soon.
Hopefully next year, but yeah, that'd be awesome if we were both there.
That'd be brilliant. Maybe he's even put here, maybe Masters of Scale session between the two of you. Now, I've just finished listening to Jessica Alba's one, which was absolutely brilliant. Right, what else do we have here in the questions? Here we go, Dan. One of the core differences between leading a sports team and building a business is that in the former, you don't necessarily get to pick your team. How do you get every player working together despite this, especially when it's not your call to fire them? It's a very interesting question. The coaches and the selectors are the people that select the team. And something I've learned is this might sound strange, but they don't always necessarily just pick the best players. And in the All Blacks, we had the saying, better people make better All Blacks. So a lot of it had to do with your personality, the type of person, whether this person can fit into your culture or not. Because if they're playing for the wrong reasons, they're really selfish, they're not a team player, you can't really trust them, then, and you do have players in the environment, but they don't last. So it's up to the selectors to obviously get to know the people, the players, and if they're not initially, you have time to change. I'm not saying change the person you are, because you need to be your real self. I think that's one of the most important things, but you need to fit as part of the culture. And Reid, I'm sure it's the same. You get to choose who you join your culture, and a lot of it, I'm sure, is the type of person they are, where they fit into your mission of where you're wanting the team to go. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, totally. And one of the classic challenges is sometimes you don't choose everyone on your team, but then you try to make it work. And sometimes the way it's like, look, either this person or I need to shuffle off this team, but like there's a whole set of skills and trying to improve it and make it work too.
Yeah. Obviously, there's a question for me about recently retiring. Retired from professional rugby earlier in the year, and how much of a huge decision it was after dedicating so much of my life up until now to that point. How were you able to cope with this big change? For me, it was challenging. It's all I've really known. It's the thing, like I mentioned earlier, my very first test match, my mission, my goal, my purpose. The reason I was getting out of bed each day was to be not just an All Black, but an All Black great. And all of a sudden, you retire or you finish. So what I knew that I needed to do was repurpose. That was my purpose in life. And now, okay, I need to go through a repurposing. I'm still going through it. But something that I've really learned through this repurposing focus is how much I love winning, how much I love leadership, how much I care about the next generation, hence being the first leader in practice here at Oxford, because I want to share my experiences, my knowledge with the next generation. So that's why I'm here. So I think it's really important. And it's not just in sport when you finish playing, it can be in business as well. You can work for a company for a number of years, and you need change, and you need to repurpose. Like, what is it that's going to get me out of bed each day? And I'm going through that process at the moment. It's actually really invigorating. It gives you energy, and you understand, okay, you close that chapter of my life. It was incredible, but I'm probably just as excited, if not more excited, about this next chapter and what the next decade or two look like. I'm sure throughout your life as well, Reid, you've had certain shifts in direction and purpose that's been driving you.
Yeah, repurposing and reinvention. I mean, like the The parallel in entrepreneurship is like you discover product market fit and then you just turn the crank and work on scale. No, actually, in fact, you have to rediscover and recommit every so often. And what got you here isn't what is going to get you there, both personally and as an organization. So part of what you do is it's good to have that cycle of that kind of repurposing, reinvention for yourself and also for the organization.
Yeah. Now we have clicked over the hour mark. I'm conscious of Reid's time, but basically there was some incredible insights, some real gold nuggets. I hope everyone listening, we're taking notes as I was throughout the session. There's some incredible learnings around the philosophies that the Reid has shared with entrepreneurship, incredibly insightful. The synergies, between the importance of building a culture, leadership, dealing with uncertainties, setbacks, resilience, which happens in everyday life. So I just want to thank all the attendees that have sat there patiently, those of you that contributed. I really encourage you to always pursue excellence, and as Reid said, exactly what type of excellence, and strive to be the best version of yourself. Understand that leadership is a personal journey. It can be leadership as a parent. Reid talked about all the different types of leadership. It can be as a sibling, it can be as a sports person like myself, it can be as a CEO or a manager. Leadership is it's a perception of life and subsequent action, and leadership executed with purpose, compassion, and resilience will have a profound domino effect across the world. Now, it's our duty as individuals to be the best leaders we can be, and encourage, empower, and enable those around us to make the world a better place together. Lastly, a huge thank you to Reid for your time, your support for the Foundry, and also sharing your wisdom with us here today. We really appreciate everything that you've shared with us today, Reid.
Dan, huge pleasure, and hope to do this in person at Oxford in the not too distant future.
I am well and truly looking forward to that. Thank you so much. That's all from Reid and I. Ka pai, kia ora, and thank you.